Action item number 8. Do we have any comments for action item number 8? Yes, we do. Rochelle White. Good morning.
Good morning. First, I'd like to thank these people behind me for the time they've invested into pursuing or establishing Brentwood Glen as a PPD. I'm sorry your energies couldn't be allocated to a more pressing matter. A PPD is an effective and logical solution for neighborhoods adjacent high-traffic retail and dining establishments and places of Orthodox worship. Brentwood Glen does not fall into this category. Simply put, we do not have a parking issue. The cars on Brentwood Glen streets overwhelmingly belong to its residents, due in part to the number of cars that many households have, sometimes more cars than drivers. The 1940s architecture that makes using the garages challenging, if not impossible, as well as the fact that families of 4 or more live in 1,300 square foot bungalows and have allocated their garages to other purposes than car storage, understandably. A PPD is not going to solve for the dissatisfaction certain residents feel when they cannot park directly in front of their home, a privilege they demand but are not entitled to. Never, ever have I or one of my guests not been able to park within 100 feet of my home. That is enough for me. I leave it to my other neighbors to discuss how poorly, if not fraudulently, communicated and managed this process has been. I'm ardently against making Brentwood Glen a PPD at this time. Quite simply, it is entirely unwarranted, unwanted by the vast majority of Brentwood Glen residents, and not an effective use of the department's time and resources. I'll also add that the individuals who most ardently pursued the Brentwood Glen PPD were unable to gather sufficient signatures to include their own blocks in the first round of blocks to be eligible for permit parking. I think that tells you something. Thank you.
Thank you. Ziggy Cruz.
Good morning still. Ziggy Cruz again, Brentwood Glen neighborhood. We submitted a package last night to the agenda item 8, and I believe that Ms. Lewis has presented this to your commissioners. I hope you have read it, because we presented some, I would call it some evidence that the other people did not provide. One of them is that, number one, the agenda or the findings are completely all over the place. Staff recommends, or staff refers to a section of CEQA claiming that it applies, which is Article 3. It does not. We provided a copy of what Article 3.1.8.3 actually refers to. I'm sure it's a clerical error. If that's the case, then this item should not move forward. It should be postponed, agendized at a different time in the future, so that the commissioners and staff can revisit the CEQA guidelines of the City of Los Angeles, which is part of the City Planning Department. Also, the City of Los Angeles is pushing for mobility and to use public transportation. Yet here you have LADOT coming out, taking away parking possibilities next to bus stops. Per the parking study that was conducted by the LADOT, most of the impacted streets that have no parking in quotations, are on Church Lane, which is right next to the bus stops of the MTA or the Metro. The 602 goes down Church Lane, it turns around on Church, and Sunset and Church goes down to Montana, connects to Montana to go to Westwood. Personally, we have witnessed people getting off the bus, getting in their car. The other way around too, getting out of the bus or getting on the bus while after parking their vehicles on the street. So now DOT wants to take that opportunity away by restricting the 2 hours. So how can anybody that comes from the valley, uses the freeway to get off, and then uses public transportation, which LADOT's Mobility Plan 2035 is pushing through, anything under point 3 in the mobility plan should be looked at. Because of LADOT, who is the lead agency with the City of LA, basically, to push this plan forward, removes this, you're adding more cars to the road, you're adding more greenhouse gas emissions to the road, you're adding more traffic congestions to the road, all the points that LADOT so badly wants to eliminate. Yet here you go contradicting yourself by going with one neighborhood group to give them free parking in front of their house for 2 hours for the friends. That's not good planning, especially when it comes to public transportation. I would like to know where the mayor stands on that. We'll find out, won't we?
Thank you, Ziggy. I'd like to ask you a question. You're obviously very passionate about this issue, and it's quite unusual that we have homeowners in opposition to preferred parking. Usually homeowners are all in favor of it and they love it. So what is the number one reason that you're against? Is it because you would have to get the permits, or because it would infringe upon your guests, or what?
It's a whole slew of reasons.
But if you were just to encapsulate one.
Well, one of them, what you said, it's a public road. It should be available to any member of the public. It shouldn't be restricted to just the people that live there. We are fortunate we have a driveway, but we also have guests that park on the street. So now we're being impacted by getting permits to make sure that even if they come unannounced, say, wait a minute, you can't park here, park somewhere else, and then we'll pick you up because we don't have a permit ready. No, I can go online and pay it, but why should we pay for a parking permit on a road that should be free to the public? Now, if restrictions pop up somewhere else, we've been in places like Beverly Hills and other areas in the city of Los Angeles where they have the parking restriction. It's a pain in the butt to get to where you want to go without having to go through the process of getting where you need to go. And so that's definitely one issue. But another issue, again, is we don't have a parking problem in the neighborhood. As Rachel said, there's ample parking in the neighborhood. Those that want it, they want the parking in front of their house because some other neighbors may have parked their car there a little bit longer than 4 hours. So now Mrs. Smith or Mr. Smith is coming home and can't park there because there are groceries in their bag. We shouldn't be impacted by that. We should have the opportunity to raise our voices. Now, when we contacted the council office, it was a shut door. It was a one-door policy only for the BGA. BGA did not do outreach. So when I see this, yes, I am passionate about this. I'm actually infuriated about this because we have LADOT staff, as Rachel said, wasting man-hours and public funds on this stuff. But then again, staff report itself says it's all going to be paid for in the end because once you approve it, once this traditional rubber stamp goes down on the paper, the city is going to collect what? Parking fees for those that are violators. They're going to collect the establishment fees of whatever else needs to be going there. And those that need parking permits, what do? They have to pay for that. It's an annual fee. If you're on a minimum income, there are residents in our neighborhood that are, well, elderly people, limited income. Yes, they may live in a house, but we don't know their circumstances, and now you're pushing this on them. Then the way the BGA started this, there was so much wrong from the get-go that there was no outreach done. If this outreach would have, but what I'm doing right now here would have been voiced at the very beginning, we would not be sitting here right now. None of the people back there would have wasted their man-hours on this. None of the BGA members would have been kind of given this opportunity to speak. Now, well, at the point, it's almost like a point of no return. And yes, I'm trying to calm down.
All right, calm down, because we do have to get to the other speakers, but I appreciate
but you asked
the
me a question.
I did.
So the passion comes through by asking one question. That was the right question to ask. Why do we want it? We don't want it. We don't need it. There is no need. There is no UCLA parking overflow many days and weeks at end. Where do they get this from? I don't get it. This is one of the support letters that in our package, Exhibit 1, that was submitted to council by the BGA, that UCLA student days at end, non-residents days and weeks at end park their vehicles. There's no proof of it. LADOT, CD 11 didn't go out there to challenge this or to find out. They just relied on one letter. And then this group of people was involved in creating the letter from Mr. Bonin's office. There's email correspondence. Look it up. If you need it, we'll send it to you. Email correspondence between Corey Solomon and CD 11. How should this be worded? We need this letter of support. What do you need us to do? Well, if there's so much involvement from one group, ask the opponents the same question. What should Mr. Bonin input in this letter that's in opposition, and have you, the decision makers, if this goes forward, make the decision. Independence, like my husband said, does not exist unless you prove us otherwise. Thank you.
Thank you.
Don't ask me any other questions.
I won't. I read your packet, by the way. Robert Blue.
I've been a residence homeowner, luckily, and blessed to be there for over 27 years. walk the neighborhood daily. I'm very familiar with the parking situation, but you did ask a good question. The question is, why would someone who's an homeowner be joyously supporting it? One of the things is we want to be an inclusive neighborhood. We don't want to say stay out, or be negative to people, or people have the hardship of being fined or ticketed and not having the time to take away from work to go fight a ticket and just pay it. So I think it's a very negative thing to have that restriction in the neighborhood. Also, a very important part is we all should be objective. It should be an unbiased analysis. It should be science. I mean, that's what traffic engineers here, this is a professional task that we do is, and I happen to be an engineer too, and when one neighborhood group that, again, doesn't follow any rules that like a neighborhood council would do, writes a letter, and then asks the council office sends them back to write the letter that's going to you, there is no objectivity because they're the proponents. And at least before a staff report is written by LADOT, it should be verified. Or else, when you're saying there's a statement of findings, you have in that statement of findings that UCLA students and others are parking there. What was the analysis? What was the investigation done to determine that? So it's a false statement, and it's also unsubstantiated. So that is an example of something that I cannot understand when you see various statements of findings. What's the point of LADOT processing this if they don't analyze it themselves and look at it objectively? Why would even the council office, why would LADOT take those unverified statements and use them as a statement of fact, a statement of findings? So that's something we really need to look at the process for this neighborhood, but any neighborhood. We want to be fair, objective, unbiased, and just look at a clean slate to look at the analysis for processing any request like this, because it takes away a public benefit.
Mr. Commissioner, I have a question.
Yes.
And I'm in danger of maybe lengthening this.
I'll tell you what, let's set another 2 minutes for the question. No, I'm going to give 2 minutes for all questions. So if you're fast enough and someone else wants another one, they can do it.
Was this issue raised at the association meeting? Are you guys members of the association?
We're not. That's part of the problem. It's not open.
I may.
There is no Brown Act, requirement for meeting notices. They meet monthly, and they're secret meetings. They're by invitation only. They have maybe an annual meeting, but again, why should we rely on this neighborhood association? I've requested their bylaws over 2 years ago at the Brentwood Community Council, and I've never been provided them. We've emailed them. We don't have meeting minutes or the monthly meetings. So they're plotting all this, and they don't reveal their financial transactions. At least if you're a nonprofit, you're required to. So why should they have preferential standing claiming to represent members of the community when the groups now that we're part of opposing it have over 70 people that have written to us? So I think we have a greater number of people opposing this proposal, PPD proposal. So that, to answer your question, no. And again, if we at least operate with organizations that are fair, governmental organizations that follow ethics laws, that have openness and transparency, that's what we're looking for. Just openness and transparency, it keeps everything clean and honest, and that's what we're looking for here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Norman Beal.
Hello. I want to speak to an issue that was just raised about most people in neighborhoods want to have it. And that's what happened in Brentwood Glen. About 18 months ago, a survey went out that said, are you in favor of preferential parking? And I'm told they got 80% on that. That was a long time ago. Petitions went out, and the proponents said that they had about 25 blocks signed up. Then the opponents found out about it, and correct information about permit parking was disseminated. Those 25 people started writing into the Brentwood Glen Association saying, please take my name off the petition. The petitions could have been handed in as late as January 26th of this year. They were rushed in November because so many people were asking to take their name off the list that it went from 25 streets they had signed up down to 13. So rather than lose more streets, they rushed the petitions in. So they submitted 13. Today, we're down to 8. People are signing counter petitions, and as far as I know, this has never happened like this, the counter petitions coming in. Now I'd like to talk about what I came here to talk about, which is this map. I don't know if you see it. So this is Brentwood Glen, and that's UCLA. There's Brentwood Glen, the only way to get out of any of this area towards UCLA is one street, Montana. So you go under the freeway, you go past Woodland Hills, and then you finally get to UCLA. It's a very long way to go to save $8. At the field test, I followed the truck around. The cars that were on the streets that passed, $150,000 cars, Teslas, Mercedes, Range Rovers. These were neighborhood cars that were in garages of the proponents that wanted this to pass. You know what? The neighborhood did not pass because they counted 957 spaces throughout Brentwood Glen. 590 were occupied. That's 62%. That's less than 85%. They said, well, only 4 blocks need to pass. And in the memo you got today from the Department of Transportation, it quotes the rules and procedures, but it misquotes them. The rules and procedures don't say on any 4 blocks. They say 85% of the streets in a preferential parking district. They don't say 85% on 4 blocks. Ms. Reynolds inserted those words. That is I mean, if she was a lawyer, that would be a violation of professional ethics. You can't present to a tribunal a statute, an ordinance, and then write your own words.
We're running out of time. You're over your time, so if you can wrap it up, I'd appreciate it.
I would just like to submit, rather than spend more time on it, and I think you have it, the memo about the Kashmir block for your consideration. The residents don't want it. The Department of Transportation wants to keep that block permit parking, but it didn't make the 75%. It's all explained in my memo.
All right. Thank you, sir.
But my point is, I would just like you guys to say, no, the 4-block thing is not in the rules and procedures, and you can't change the rules and procedures without the city council. So I'd like the Transportation Commission to tell the Department of Transportation what the rules and procedures say and that they don't say 4 blocks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Carla Malden. Good morning.
I've lived in the Brentwood Glen for 34 years. There was an abundance of parking when I moved in. There's an abundance of parking now. That's in answer to your original question to Ziggy. The main thing is we do not have a parking problem, plain and simple. I want to discuss one particular facet of the pitch, and I use that word advisedly, that was used by the few proponents of permit parking to garner signatures, and that has to do with calling it a crime deterrent. I happen, unfortunately, to have been the victim of a violent crime in my front yard 2 years ago. And so, of course, that was a feature of this pitch, again, advisedly, that really spoke to me and may well have been targeted to me for all I know. At first, it was used by a Brentwood Glen Association activist who was one of the few proponents, and I declined to sign the petition because I hadn't done my research and no other research was presented to me at that time. And then it was used by Maria Gray at the community meeting, the annual community meeting, who is our West LA police liaison for our community. And she said that, and I believe I'm quoting, permit parking signs would be a crime deterrent. I returned home and contacted the detective who had been on our case and indeed succeeded in catching the guy. And he was, in this, our neighborhood obviously is his beat, and he was appalled. He said, if there was ever a neighborhood not suitable for permit parking, it's the Brentwood Glen. You have no reason to have it. There's no parking issue for any of the residents. And he called it just, and I quote, a pain that was not worth the effort for our neighborhood. And he said, to the best of his knowledge as a West LA police detective, it was not a crime deterrent. There was, and I quote, no correlation between crime deterrence and the establishment of a PPD. So I reached out to Maria Gray and gave her this information, and she backpedaled. She said, well, I was talking about a neighborhood looking well tended. And, various hems and haws. But she never went public to the community at large with this retraction. And indeed, it doesn't even really make sense to me, because if you just go the other side of the freeway to Westwood Hills, you see that the signs indeed speak to the opposite of a tidy neighborhood. They're dingy, they're dilapidated, they're tilting, they're peeling, et cetera. But that's neither here nor there. She did not go public. And that, to me, I wanted to just address this one little point about crime as part of the pitch, because it's emblematic of various other points that one could go into and point to that were used in the pitch to garner signatures that were either half-truths or downright misinformation and were never officially and broadly corrected. Now, I don't know if I am allowed to have a little extra time to read a letter from a Brentwood Glen Association board member.
I would prefer you just give us the synopsis.
Okay.
We're already out of time.
I understand. It's from Kathy Foley, who is one of our Brentwood Glen Association board members, and she is a board member who is strongly opposing the PPD, both on the basis of the fact that it's unwarranted and on the procedure that was used to garner signatures.
Great. Thank you very much.
Do you like the letter? Shall I read it? Or?
You can put it in the file.
Okay.
We can't accept the letter at this meeting.
Does she need to give it to our assistant?
Yes, you give it, if you'd like to give it to our executive secretary, it can be emailed to commissioners at a later date. Christina Dunlop.
Good morning. Thank you for your time. I live on Keel, which is the top of the Brentwood Glen, so I'm right near the two hotels, the Lux and Angelino. Ever since I lived in the Glen, I've moved there 2 years ago. I've dealt with parking issues from UCLA students, and to clarify, UCLA is not walking distance, but a lot of people use scooters, Ubers. It's not that uncommon. It's part of the younger generation what they use, and it's free parking. UCLA parking is very expensive, which everyone knows about, so we have a free parking lot for UCLA students. So we deal with UCLA students, Lux Hotel employees, Angelino Hotel employees, and use our parking lot as a neighborhood because it's very central. We're right next to the 405. We're kind of a middle ground. Regularly in front of my house, I see people parking their cars, carpooling, and all getting in a car. We have cameras all around our house. I'm not uncertain who the cars are. There's only 9 spots on my street, and we all know our neighbors. I know which cars are my neighbors' cars and which cars are outsiders. So it's very frustrating as a mother who has a young child and elderly parents. I have to carry a lot of crap all the time, and so I'm constantly schlepping stuff, and I have to park 2 blocks away because our garage is too small to fit our cars. And as we spoke to before, a lot of the neighbors have garages that don't fit 2 cars, or they fit 1 car. So street parking is really crucial for our neighborhood. And just as another point, I think that one of the frustrations I've had during this process is, people talk about misinformation. I mean, there's been so much misinformation I would say, on the other side of saying that Archer, some of the schools have the right to parking, like there's some clause that exempts them, that even with permit parking, they'll be able to park in our parking lot. And so I would say the same about the other side of the group, that there was a lot of misinformation spread to get people to remove signatures as well. So I hope you support our community and help us. I think that it would be nice if you could park within a block or 2 blocks of your home. We do have a lot of elderly neighbors and people with children who are carrying a lot of stuff to their home, and it makes it very difficult when you can't park close to your home. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Corey Solomon.
I'm Corey Solomon. Although I am president of the Brentwood Glen Association, I'm here representing myself. But I do want to make one quick point. First, I want to thank everybody who has worked with us on the PPD. I want to thank you, all of you. I would like to thank Lisa Calhill and Mike Bonin, Aaron Thompson, and everybody who's worked. Yes, this has been a very contentious proposition for the Brentwood Glen. Facts, as someone else said, have gone back and forth. Some correct, some incorrect, maybe on both sides. But I want to, and I feel free to after I speak, if you some of the things that were just said were incorrect facts regarding the Brentwood Glen. I will say we are an open community. Anybody is welcome to be a member of the Brentwood Glen Association. I've even told those people that they can. But let me get to myself. I have lived in the Brentwood Glen for 33 years, and I have watched the changes and the different issues that have occurred. No, not all streets have a parking issue, but many, many streets do. We do have issues with UCLA parking there, and also there are businesses on Sepulveda that they can't park on Sepulveda. There's not a big enough lot. They park in the Brentwood Glen and walk over. My husband sees it daily when he drives to work. He sees them park, walk across. I also have a mother who's handicapped. My street right now does not have a problem. She used to live on a street that did have a problem, and she couldn't park with her handicap in front of her house. I think on the area adjacent to us, Westwood Hills, has permit parking, and because they have the permit parking, that is why we get a lot of homes from UCLA. You know, a lot of people from UCLA parking in our area. I've used up my time, so.
Well, you can wrap it up.
Okay. But I think for certain streets, example Montana, where people have lived there for so many years, they've had an issue. And they've tried several times to get permit parking. And this is the first time that it's gone as far as it has. And they are grateful, many of the residents, that this is happening. And I'll end by saying that we did get over 280 signatures on petitions. Not all of them qualified. We never had 25 streets that qualified. We just had, I think when we turned in, we had about 14, and that has narrowed down. And when someone requested to be taken off, we took them off.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Rebecca Burkhart.
Hi, thank you for hearing our sides, both sides. And I would just like to say, I have lived on Church Lane for 18 years now. And to everyone who says there's no problem with UCLA students, they don't understand the problem, so I will explain it. A car alarm going off outside your son's bedroom window at 2 in the morning. And who's going to call LADOT at 2 in the morning? So, sorry. Instead, we wake up every 20 minutes. And I called them in the morning, and I sent my son to school, and he got in so much trouble for falling asleep in class. I mean, what teacher would do that to an 8-year-old boy? But anyways, I have needed this for 18 years, and now I finally don't because we have 4 cars, and it's going to be a slight hassle for us. We're going to probably have to be swapping out visitor passes. But in the time that I super needed it, I had 2 small children. I never parked anywhere near the front of my house. I was fine just parking on Church Lane and schlepping stuff. But UCLA students take that. Construction crews take that. And we've had 3 construction van pulls. I've had 3 car alarms go off outside from long-term parked cars, but only that one in the middle of the night was horrible. One was actually a car being stolen or repossessed. I don't know, but they took it out of my hair, and I was happy. So anyway, I don't think Christina, she just has babies right now. She doesn't even know what she's in for because it gets so much worse. I actually spent money to widen my driveway because when you also have a small kid, the Glen has short driveways, and you can't just put that minivan in the driveway. So we had to widen it so we could park at an angle so we're not crossing over the half of the sidewalk. And that was finally my solution. So when I came home with the bikes and the beach stuff and all the backpacks and all their friends and everything and the groceries, then I was able to at least leave my car there while I got everything settled and then, go and find some parking somewhere in the neighborhood. But I ran out of time, so.
Great. Thank you very much.
Uh-huh. And we do have a UCLA problem. It's just right now, kids aren't driving as much, but it'll be back.
Yoram?
Good morning. My name is Yoram Tal, and I'm a neighbor in I live in the Brentwood Glen. I would like to thank the Parking Permit Division, especially Aaron Thompson, Councilmember Bona's office, especially Lisa Cahill, and this Parking Commission for moving this PPD hopefully forward. To the complete surprise of everyone in our small neighborhood of Brentwood Glen, the PPD encountered opposition that is so vehemently against the solution for parking issues so many neighbors suffer from. From nonstop harassment of city officials, flyers filled with lies and blatant inaccuracies, leaked private phone numbers of parking proponents, and screaming at public meetings, and endless delay tactics, and filings, and everything else. This PPD process was done by the book from day one. Almost 50% of households in the Brentwood Glen signed on with an overwhelming majority of 85% of the submitted petitions. Parking study confirmed what residents have been complaining about for years. Please don't let interest of non-residents like hotel workers, UCLA, and Archer School students dictate how we get to live in our own neighborhood. Please approve PPD 292. I want to show so this is all the petitions that were submitted. And then we had hundreds of other households that signed on to petitions that didn't qualify, so they were not submitted. So we went through some streets. The main issue started from Montana Avenue, that is right there at the exit of to our neighborhood, from our neighborhood, where UCLA student park, take scooters, take Uber, and carpool. We had a lot of construction going on in our neighborhood, but it was also a period of time where there's a lot of construction going on in Bel Air. So we would have carpool vans pick up workers that would park in our neighborhood. We are a small pocket surrounded by parking permit districts on all areas, and we're basically a parking lot. People park, go to LAX, leave their cars for 2 weeks. We call 311. Eventually, the cars get removed. But it's an ongoing issue. And as Corey mentioned, she lived in the neighborhood a lot longer than I have. It's an ongoing issue that's been getting worse and worse continuously. And when this came up, yes, the initial survey that was sent out on SurveyMonkey through Nextdoor app got over 80%. And then these signatures prove again, and this is official document. This is not something that we're coming up with. This is not a phone call that I might have or did not have. These are official signatures. They were confirmed by the parking division. And then there was a parking study that proved, again, it's a real issue. So I think that we as proponents of this did what the community wanted, and then the parking division did what it's their job to do, confirm the petitions, confirm the study, and now we're here, hopefully, to get this moved forward.
Great. Thank you very much.
Sure. Thank
I'd like to thank all the speakers that came today from both sides of this issue. I understand there's a lot of passion involved. Without giving away my age, I'm very familiar with that neighborhood for at least a staff member that can represent this issue. Of course we do. Good morning.
Before Linda Evans, Division Manager, Parking Permits Division, I want to just congratulate and thank Aaron on such diligence and such hard work, constant emails. He operates at a very, very high level, and he follows processes to a T, and he will challenge them. And I just want the commissioners to know that we have followed the rules and the procedures to the letter of the law. And I'll let Aaron present.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Aaron Thompson, Management Analyst with the Los Angeles Department of Transportation Parking Permits Division. The item before you today is a request to establish Preferential Parking District number 292 in the Brentwood Glen neighborhood in Council District 11. Council District 11 staff contacted the Parking Permit Division to request a meeting with several residents of the Brentwood Glen neighborhood to discuss the Preferential Parking District program relative to the parking issues affecting the neighborhood. The residents indicated that UCLA students, employees of nearby hotels, and other non-residents park in the neighborhood, making it difficult to find on-street parking. Following the meeting, Councilmember Mike Bonin submitted an official letter of request to the department for the establishment of a preferential parking district. Following receipt of Councilmember Bonin's request letter, staff issued petitions for the residents of each block included in the request. Subsequently, the department received signed petitions that met the petition criteria for 9 blocks, and originally it was only 11 blocks. It was reduced to 9. Someone indicated it was more than 11. It was 11 blocks reduced to 9 due to the counter petition. And that exceeded the 6-block minimum requirement. In addition, staff conducted a parking study on multiple blocks within the proposed area and confirmed that 13 blocks were excessively impacted by on-street parking at the time of the parking study. Based on this information, the department recommends the approval for the establishment of Preferential Parking District number 292. And I want to add that anyone who did not submit a petition that met the requirements will not be impacted by any restrictions that are installed. It will only impact the people that submitted petitions and wanted the restrictions. Mm-hmm. So if you live on a block that is not posted, you do not have to purchase the permit. You can park on your block without any restrictions. And I'll be happy to answer any of your questions.
Great. Thank you, Aaron. I have a couple of questions, and then I'm going to open it up to commissioners for their questions, because I think there will be some. The first question I have is, it's been said that the parking study was skewed, the percentage, that it's not actual 85%, that it's really 65% of respondents.
The parking study applies to individual blocks, not the entirety of the neighborhood. So we apply the parking study on a block-by-block basis.
The next, I get that, I understand, thank you. The next question is that the parking study was skewed because some of the blocks are very short blocks, and to say that there is no parking there when there are only maybe 2 cars and it could maybe fit 3 cars is inaccurate.
There's a map that indicates where the blocks that passed the parking study, and you would see the blocks in blue that passed. Now, the rules and procedures do not specify the length of a block. It does not specify how many houses are on a block or how many cars can fit on a block. It identifies a block as being intersection to intersection.
So you're using the letter of the law on that.
Exactly.
All right. And my last question is that there was some question as far as the petitions that were accepted, that the results might have been skewed or coerced. Did you find anything?
That is something that is that takes place at the time that I issue blank petitions to a designated resident. Mm-hmm. The method that they go about obtaining the signatures is outside of the department's purview. What we do is we review, when I receive the petitions, we verify a certain percentage of the signatures to verify that they actually did sign. So the method that they went about obtaining it is, we're not there at the time.
So you believe that you have 85% within the designated blocks that would be affected?
A minimum of 75% must pass the petition process, and yes, I do.
Great, thank you very much. I'd like to open the questioning if any other...
I just have a clarifying question. You mentioned, from 13 to 9, or sorry, from 11 to 9 to how many blocks are actually included in this?
9 blocks past the petition.
And in the report, just to make it very clear in my mind, there is a PPD boundary,
Right.
but within that boundary, there are only certain blocks
That will be
getting, the residents are going to get permits.
Right.
Okay.
But any block within that boundary any resident who resides in the block, on any block within the boundary, can request a petition at any later date.
I see.
To be posted.
Okay, all right.
How many total blocks are in the boundary? The council office requested 70-some blocks to be included?
74 total.
74. I think that was...
Okay.
So out of 74 blocks, 9 will be preferred parking?
9 will be posted.
Right.
All the blocks will be included within the boundary, and any block within that boundary any resident.
At a later date?
Yeah, at a later date.
And do all the residents, this is Commissioner Lubon again, do all the residents understand what you just said, that only 75% passed petitions will be included as a PPD
Yeah, and I've
permitted?
indicated to the opponents who have contacted me,
Okay,
including some people that are here,
okay.
that only the residents that live on a block that's posted will be impacted.
No, the question is, do they understand that if their block, although it's within the PPD boundary, does not have 75% of the petitions, will not be posted? They understood
made
that.
that very
Okay,
clear.
all right, okay.
Commissioner Tejada, thank you so much for answering our questions, and because I have a few, because there's so many different numbers going around right now. PPD, the whole area, Beverly Glen, if I was a resident there and I'm not on a block that is posted, can I still buy a permit?
You can still purchase a permit and park on any block that is posted, an annual permit.
An annual permit?
Right.
Okay, and it is true that there was a study and it showed that UCLA students and other people were parking?
We perform a parking study to identify blocks that are impacted by 85%. Well, the parking spaces are impacted by 85% of the spaces are impacted. 85% of the spaces are impacted.
So but there was no study that showed it was UCLA students or who it is?
That's identified by the residents and the council district.
Mm-hmm.
And we only verified that there's actually vehicles on the block occupying 85% of the space.
So that's like what a traffic study, a parking study is. It just says how many cars were on there.
Exactly.
It doesn't identify who's driving them.
Right. Or that whether they're residents or not.
Residents or not, yeah.
Okay. And it's only done one day or one time?
One time.
One time. Okay. And so as some of the residents had mentioned, there was construction and things like that, and other construction areas going on, and neighbors. Was it during that time that the study was done?
I don't know what was taking place at that time, but construction isn't considered one of the leading factors for establishing a PPD because it's a temporary issue.
Right,
Focus
right.
on
So that's what thank you. That's what I'm trying to get at is like, was the study done when there was heavy construction? Because I know I live in Miracle Mile area, so I know, there's construction problems and yes, and it causes a lot of problems. But yeah, so then, exactly. That's, I was just wondering if that's how that was related, like when was the study done exactly compared to this, compared to when the petitions were and things. So just.
But, yeah, like I said, I don't know what activity is taking place at the time of the parking study, but.
Right.
Yeah. We wouldn't have included any construction vehicles or anything of
Right,
that
not construction vehicles, but because what neighbors have said, and I have this in my own neighborhood too, we do have a PPD in Miracle Mile, but is that when there is construction, then you're going to go somewhere else and park. So some of the residents here may now be parking on the areas that would be posted, right? But maybe now, anyway, I'm, I'm a systems person as an engineer, and so this is, I'm just thinking about all the different things that could happen and what is going to actually be the remedy, you know.
Linda Evans,
yeah.
just keep in mind, those who didn't sign a petition to support it, they won't have them on their street.
Okay.
Linda,
Commissioner Labange.
yeah, to that point, if the particular block actually have 75% of the petitioners, at some point in the future, they don't need it anymore, for whatever reason, can they de-petition?
They can circulate a petition to remove the restriction on their block.
Okay, good, perfect.
And